So, good day everyone. We are the 10th reporter, and for this day, we are going to tackle about digital rights management. Under digital rights management, we will be tackling about its definition, the techniques to control access and reproduction of online information, the protection of undisclosed information, and information privacy. Well, some of us might be familiar of the term digital rights. If we can remember, it is the prevention granted to individuals to legitimately perform actions involving the use of a computer or any electronic device. So for now, we are going to define digital rights management. These are the processes by which the author or publisher of a work exerts his or her rights to control what the purchaser of the work is entitled to do. This represents the control by which one can prevent a person or an organization from copying, printing, editing, or otherwise making the privileged information available to other people. So the word author implies the owner, while the purchaser can be anyone, and it includes us who makes use of the works of that author or publisher. So to simply put, when we say digital rights management, it gives the purchaser limitations to prevent unauthorized redistribution. So digital rights management is actually a systematic approach to copyright protection for digital media. So that is the concept or the purpose of this DRM concept. So with the introduction of technology and the internet, the print age is slowly becoming obsolete, with publishers shifting to the digital age. So this is evident nowadays, right? Before, we have to manually print copies or photocopy parts of our books if we want to. But nowadays, we can now settle for soft copies of books such as PDF files. So with digital technologies, copies are made at zero cost with minimal detection. And this example is actually true. I think most of us experience this one. So when we know a book, take for example a famous book, instead of buying it at the bookstore at a certain price, we tend to search on the internet for free copies. And so because of that, the user of that content can redistribute it to others and make use of it. So if we are going to be asked, is this action illegal or legal? Actually, it can be both. First, it can be legal if a certain idea or book is held for public domain. So what's public domain? It means that the owner authorizes the viewers to be able to access that certain product. However, if the author or owner did not allow redistribution or access, it means that it is not for free and it is subject to copyright. So as much as we, purchasers, have the right to buy, they also have the rights as authors because they are the ones who made it. Without digital rights management, there will be a lot of intellectual property infringement. Actually, it's not just books. We also have here examples such as movies, music, and software applications. So with this setup, the prevalence of peer-to-peer or torrent sites have made information control much harder. I think most of us are familiar with torrents. There are times that if we wish to download a movie for free, we tend to use torrent sites. Torrents are a method of distributing files over the internet. They operate over the BitTorrent protocol to facilitate what's called peer-to-peer file sharing. And because of that, the information is disseminated faster to consumers. Now, it actually creates a dilemma or an issue. Why? Because it will be hard to control it due to the prevalence of torrent and P2P file sharing. A good example of that would be this one. If we like a certain music, we try to download it, right, so that we can listen on it from time to time, rather than listening to it on musical platforms. So what happens is that pirated music does not help our artists as they are deprived of the royalties they are entitled to do. At the same time, getting music for free does not mean we are free from malicious software and hacking attacks. So we should always be reminded that it does not mean that we have it for free, then we are free from the consequences. So we have to be mindful of the adverse consequences of our actions, especially this idea of hacking or malwares. So when you try to download some torrent sites or get engaged with a site that downloads music, sometimes we neglect the terms of conditions or agreements, right? So we just check it right away without us knowing that there are malicious software that are bound to get our information, and because of that, this hacking happens. And as consumers, we don't want that to happen to us. Thus, companies and organizations have come up with a possible solution to this digital dilemma. And because of those solutions, we will now be discussing the techniques designed to control access and reproduction of online information. We have here four main techniques, namely encryption, serial keys, scrambling, and tag embedding. So first is encryption. Encryption is the process of converting data or information in such a way that only authorized parties can understand. So what is the purpose of this? It aims to protect the confidentiality of digital data stored on computer systems or transmitted via the internet or other computer networks. Now, how does this work? So an example of this would be this situation. When we use ATM or buy something online with a smartphone, encryption happens so that our information is safe and secure. That is how digital rights management works for multimedia. The DRM system would encrypt the material in such a way that only a particular device can play or retrieve it. Therefore, there are constraints for its usage. When we say encryption translates data into another form or code so that only people with access to a secret key or password can read it. So for trivia, encrypted data is commonly referred as ciphertext and unencrypted data is plain text. Again, the goal of this is to keep confidentiality. Next, serial keys, also known as product key or software key. It is a series of alphanumeric characters acting as a key to denote that the product or software is original. In some cases, product keys are used for production activation. So, for example, the Microsoft Windows OS. If you don't have the product key, you won't be able to activate the operating system online. The goal of this is to maintain authenticity by making sure no one else has used the same product key. So usually for product activation, you are prompted with enter the serial key or enter activation code. Sometimes you have to pay for it so that you can have an activation. Again, for the purpose of this is to check if a person owns a legitimate copy of the procured and installed software. Third is scrambling. Data scrambling is done to hide sensitive information from unauthorized users. So this scrambling is usually done with the help of encryption, so they actually go hand in hand. It is the process of deleting or confusing confidential data, a method that is normally carried out by database administrators who want to preserve the confidentiality of the data. This process is irreversible so that the original data cannot be obtained from the scrambled data. In this sense, changing of some important component happens so that when someone tries to extract the original signal, it would be difficult. So the purpose of this technique is still to restrict the access to the content only to the licensed applications. So what happens with your data is that they scramble it so that it would be difficult for those who are not meant to have access. So they will not be able to access that data because they will delete or confuse a confidential data. Lastly, the tag embedding. I know we are all familiar with pictures that contain watermarks, right? So they use that to denote information on the owner of that picture. That is also how this concept of tag embedding works to the information content. In terms of data embedded into actual content, the use of metadata is included to identify the owner's name, author, and date of purchase, among other pertinent information. So what do we mean by metadata? Metadata is data that describes other data. For example, this is metadata for music file. So it might include the artist's name, the album, the year it was released. The purpose of this is to acknowledge the owner of that certain multimedia. So those are the techniques designed to control access and reproduction of online information. So apart from those techniques, we also have here the concept of patent and trademark. First, let us tackle about patent. A patent is a set of exclusive rights granted by a state to an inventor for a limited period of time in exchange for the public disclosure of an invention. The exclusive right granted to a patentee in most countries is the right to prevent others from making, using, selling, or distributing the patented invention without permission. An example would be the Apple's iPod. Since Apple is the first one to have that invention, they have the patent for that. Patent becomes an asset of their company. But it also applies to persons who are developers or inventors. An example would be Nikola Tesla. He has a patent for his design of the modern alternating current electricity supply system. Yet, issues concerning patents are crucial not only nowadays, but also before. For example, Nikola Tesla and Thomas Edison, they even had a rivalry about their competing concepts. So, see? It is not easy to invent and to prove that you are the first one to invent that. That is why patents are very important. Next is the concept of trademark. Trademark is a distinctive sign used by an individual, business organization, or other legal entity to identify the products or services to consumers. The mark comes from a unique source and it distinguishes its product or services from others. Rights in a mark shall be acquired through registration made by the Intellectual Property Code. In the Philippines, one of the most popular trademarks based on locality is the Pampanga's Best Delicacies logo. To simply put, a trademark is legally registered or established by use as representing a company or product. If you have noticed when you eat on McDonald's or go to Starbucks, their logo or product has a trademark with common symbols such as TM or R. What do these symbols stand for? The TM symbol can generally be used by any person or businesses to indicate that a particular word, phrase, or logo is intended to serve as an identifier for the source of that product or service. The TM symbol is only an identifier. It means the logo and the brand belongs to Starbucks alone. The R symbol, on the other hand, indicates that this word, phrase, or logo is a registered trademark for the product or service. Their main difference is that TM denotes that you are claiming a right to use your brand as a trademark, although it may not be registered with the relevant intellectual property office. R, the symbol R, signifies that your trademark is officially registered with the IP office in the country and for the goods and services that you are using it for. So we will now go through the protection of undisclosed information. Industries and companies need to have information control, especially in dealing with sensitive industry secrets. To protect industry secrets, also called trade secrets, companies usually require employees to sign contracts with non-disclosure agreements. So if you happen to become an employee soon, especially for manufacturing or service companies, you are obliged to sign the contract of non-disclosure agreements. Why? Because it is a trade secret that gives a company a competitive advantage. For example, Coca-Cola's formulation of their soft drink. If we notice it, Coca-Cola does not taste the same with Pepsi or any other cola, right? It's because they have different formulations. So as a respect and protection to the company you're working into, you should not disclose it because it is a company's way of uplifting their brand through their uniqueness. Otherwise, if you violate all of the things I have mentioned a while ago, including this protection of undisclosed information, you'll be sanctioned with penalties, and it is shown in the next slide. So these are the IPR terms of protection and penalties as stated in the Republic Act 8293, an act prescribing the Intellectual Property Code and establishing the Intellectual Property Rights Office in the Philippines. We have here copyright, patent, and trademark with their corresponding terms of protection and penalties. So for copyright terms of protection, generally throughout the life of the author plus 50 years after his or her death. The penalties are the following. First offense 50,000 to 150,000 and or 1 to 3 years imprisonment. Second offense 150,000 to 500,000 and or 3 to 6 years imprisonment, while third and subsequent offenses 500,000 to 1.5 million and or 6 to 9 years imprisonment. So for the patent, terms of protection is 20 years and it is time bound. Penalty would be not less than 100,000 to not more than 300,000 and or not less than 6 months to not more than 3 years imprisonment. For trademark can be renewable. So after 10 years from the date of filing of the application. Penalty would be 50,000 to 200,000 and 2 to 5 years imprisonment. So that's all for my report. We will now proceed to the report of my partner, Ms. Rtwin Navales.
Good afternoon, everyone. In this part of the presentation, I'll be discussing about information privacy. But first, let's have a breakdown on what is information and what is privacy. So first is what is information? Well, it was discussed in the first chapter that information is a processed data. It is a processed data that is structured and stored in a given context to make it meaningful and useful. Thus, information is created from data. Next would be what is privacy. Privacy is unidentified in the public. I guess this is self-explanatory because when something is private, so which means it is not shown in the public. When something is identified in the public, so it is not private. And next is privacy is a subjective condition. So you may be wondering why it is subjective. So subjective in a sense that it may differ from person to person. Example would be when you're going to log in a specific or a website which requires your username, where it requires or allows you to register with a username that differs from your real name. Sometimes we use usernames like not our real name, since you don't want anyone to know your real name. That's why you are using something alias something, not your real name, so that your real name will not be shown in the public. So sometimes people are using their real name as their username. For example, let's have you're going to log in an ML using your monitor account. And your username would be Rtwin1234, like that. And sometimes you're going to use Black Mamba as your username. So like it may differ really from person to person. It's up to you if going to use your if you're going to use your real name as your username, or you're going to use another name as your username. That's why it is subjective. Copying, logging in, transmitting, and storing data are natures of data, which means data goes in a state like this. They're going to be copied, logged, transmitted, or stored and stored again. So what is really information privacy? Information privacy is the privacy of personal information, and usually it relates to personal data stored on computer systems. The need to maintain information privacy is applicable to collected personal information, such as medical records, financial data, criminal records, political records, business-related information, or website data. Information privacy is also known as data privacy. Information privacy also may be applied in numerous ways, including encryption, authentication, and data masking, each attempting to ensure that information is available only to those with authorized access. So information privacy is considered an important aspect of information sharing. With the advanced digital age, personal information vulnerabilities have increased. So that's why protective measures are geared toward preventing data mining and the unauthorized use of personal information, which are illegal in many parts of the world. So to understand more the concept of data privacy, let's look at Yahoo privacy policy. So it states here that Yahoo collects information from your devices. This information includes device-specific identifiers and information such as IP address, cookie information, mobile device and advertising identifiers, browser version, operating system type and version, mobile network information, device settings, and software data. So in short, if you're going to log in Yahoo, your information will be collected, such as those things that I have mentioned. So first, let's have what is IP address? Since your IP address will be collected by them. What is an IP address? Well, that is an excellent question. So what is an IP address? Again, Internet Protocol Address, shortly known as IP address, refers to a unique number assigned to a device when connected to the internet. So I guess we are familiar with what is an IP address. To those who don't know what an IP address looks like, so I'll be showing you a picture of it. So here, just like this, example would be like 192.168.1.1.5, and here is 192.168. So IP address may differ from phone to phone, since every phone has a unique IP address when it is connected, if it is connected to an internet. The one that assigned your IP address is what you call your network administrator or your internet service provider. Your network administrator or internet service provider will assign a unique identifiable number when your phone or your tablet or your computer or whatsoever is connected to the internet. So sometimes when you watch a movie, like nang na yung mga movie nga na yung mga hackers or something like na sila gina-trace na tao, so they will say like, can you find the location of this person? So you may be wondering why it is easier for them to locate a person, going to find the location of a person. It's simply because of their IP address. I don't really know how they're going to hack or locate, but I know that they are locating a person using the IP address of their phone. Since nowadays people cannot live, or eventually they cannot go out without bringing their phone with them. So next is cookie. It's also stated there that your cookie information will be collected if you're going to log in Yahoo. So it is not the usual cookie that we are eating. Cookie information or cookie is just a text file. It simply looks like this, just a text file. What is inside a cookie? So cookie contains address of websites visited, login login credentials, and even credit card account numbers. This is done so that the next time the person visits the website, the computer system will no longer reload the same content or data. Sometimes, if mag-visit tao sites, na is something where will pop up na notification. Merg notification. It goes like this. This is an example. So we use cookies to analyze our website traffic to support features that enhance user experience with our privacy and cookie policies to learn more about our cookies. Okay, cookies or decline cookies. So before, when I visit when I visit websites, I usually just accept cookies, and then accept cookies. As I have learned what the cookie is and what it contains, starting now, I will decline cookies because sometimes it's risky to just accept cookies sa isa ka site since we don't know if how they were going to use our information, our login credentials, how they are going to use our data. So we should be careful in accepting cookies. So now let's have Public Act number 10173. So what is this act all about? So it is an act protecting individual personal information in information and communication systems in the government and the private sector, creating for this purpose a National Privacy Commission and for other purposes. So we all know that Philippines is dubbed as the ICT hub of Asia because of the huge growth of ICT related jobs. Filipinos are very heavy social media users. Like 24/7, we're on our phones, we are visiting different sites, opening different social media platforms. So that's why we have this Republic Act to protect our information or our data from hackers who might use our data for illegal purposes. That's why the government implemented this law. Also, this Republic Act number 10173 is also known as the Data Privacy Act of 2012. Next would be I'll be showing you a video what happened on March 27, 2016.
Sa loob ng bahay niya sa Muntinlupa, naaresto ang ikalawang hacker ng Comelec website na si Jonel De Asis. Dito siya na-trace ng mga tauhan ng NBI base sa mga online activities nito. Nang arestuhin, agad na kumpiska ng NBI Cybercrime Division ang laptop ni De Asis.
May nakita na kami na link dun sa mga information na nanggaling sa Comelec.
Pagdating sa NBI, dinumog ng media si De Asis na nung una ay nahihiya pang humarap. Pero na makausap ng news team, nakangiti at tila walang bahid ng takot si De Asis. Laro-laro lang daw ang ginawa nilang pag-hack ng Comelec website. Inaasahan na rin niya na maaresto siya ng NBI.
Ba't hindi ka sumuko?
Ay, wala. Alam naman ng NBI kung saan naman ako pupuntahan.
Inamin ni De Asis na kasama niya si Paul Biteng sa pag-hack sa Comelec website. Si Biteng ang unang hacker na naaresto ng NBI noong April 20. Sa online na daw sila nagkakausap ni Biteng. Bagamat inamin ni De Asis na siya ang nag-leak ng mga personal data ng mga botante, hindi raw siya ang naglabas nito sa isang website.
We have your data. Hindi kami yun.
Anong ginawa mo lang?
Leakage sa Facebook page.
Gaya ni Biteng, sinubukan lang daw ni De Asis na pasukin ang Comelec website dahil sa vulnerability umano nito.
Kunwari may pader ka. May maliit na butas doon na pasok mo yung butas na yun. Kaya ka nakapasok ka mismo sa server ng Comelec.
Ano yung mahina sa Comelec website?
Sa developer or SIS.
Dahil sa mga kainaan nito, nagbigay pa siya ng ilang tips sa Comelec.
Dapat 24/7 may monitoring tool sila.
Di raw dapat mag-alala mga tao na maapektuhan ng halalan sa kanilang ginawa. Public information lang daw ang kanilang nakuha. Hindi naman nila napasok ang namang may koneksyon sa vote counting machines.
Sineparate ng Comelec yun para mas secure.
Kailangan matuto ang Comelec sa mga pangyayaring ito. Ang aming website ay magiging secure.
May suwestyon naman ng ilang senador na gamiting asset ng gobyerno ng mga hacker na naaresto. Bagay na hindi naman ikinatuwa ng National Privacy Commission.
They should be dealt with the full extent of the law. Right? Hacking is not a joke.
3 hanggang 6 na taong pagkakakulong ang maaaring harapin ni De Asis. Kaya sa huli, nagpayo na lang siya sa iba pang hackers.
Gamitin niyo na lang yung talento niyo sa tama.
Samantala, nanatiling offline pa rin sa publiko ang website ng Comelec. Habang inaayos pa ang website, maaaring tumawag muna sa Comelec hotline ang gustong magtanong tungkol sa kanilang mga presinto. Pwede rin magtanong sa Facebook o sa Twitter.
Okay, so imagine a Comelec website was hacked by a hacker. How much more those sites that we are visiting? How much more Facebook? So that's why we should really be careful in providing our information, because anyone could really hack a server if they have the talent and the power to do so. That's why it serves as a lesson to the Comelec. Be monitored 24/7. So according to the law, the violation of Data Privacy Act due to negligence is what happened in Comelec. They failed to protect the data, the voters. That's why, according to the law, the violation of this act due to negligence is punishable by 3 to 6 months imprisonment and a fine of 500,000 to 4 million. So it's really, we don't really know how far hackers can go. So that's why we should be really careful in visiting websites and logging in our information in any social media platforms. So just be leaving this quote to you from brandboy.com. Maintain your privacy in social media platforms. Your security is in your hands. And that's why you should be really extra careful in providing information in the internet, in providing information in different sites. That would be all. Thank you.